So, I want to ask you a question. Who knows you best in this world? God knows you best in this world. How about on this earth? Who knows you best? Lucy, you think? You met? Your sisters? Yeah? Your grandma? Yeah. Well, knowing somebody is really a special thing, to really know them. Let me ask you this. Who loves you most in this world? You think me? Who else? Maybe each other? See, knowing and loving are really important things. And you all said, who knows you best in this world? You said God. Well, who loves you best in this world is God too. And this knowing and loving, they're really connected. To know somebody is to love them. And to love them is to know them. And know them, truly know them. And how many of you have done maybe naughty things sometimes? Right? Made some mistakes in this life. Right? And those people, they know those things about you, right? They know that you've messed up. The person that knows you so much, they know that you've messed up. They know you've been maybe not so nice sometimes. Maybe they know sometimes you've been selfish or get angry. And I have too. And the people that know me best know that about me. They know that sometimes I make mistakes. They know that sometimes I get angry over silly things. Yeah. But when you know that part of somebody, do you still love them? And that's a really important part of this. And the psalm that we read, this poem from the Bible, is a pretty long poem. And it's about how much God knows me. And sometimes that's hard because God knows even the mistakes I've made. But God loves me anyway. And through all the difficult times, through all the trials, through all the times that I've disappointed God or made mistakes, God loves me anyway. And those people in your life, it's important to have people in your life that know you for who you are, that know that you're not perfect, but know that you're still worthy of love and still love you no matter what. And I know that all of you have people in your life that are like that. And I know that you've got parents, I know that you've got siblings, I know that you've got people in this church that want to know you and are getting to know you. And I know that you have me as somebody who knows you. And I want to get to know you better over years and over time. And know that sometimes, you know what? Sometimes do I make mistakes? Sometimes do I get a little grumpy? Sometimes do I get on Wednesday night or, sometimes. But you know what? Even in those hard times, even in those difficult times, I love you so much, and I try. And sometimes I, fall short of it, but I try. And I hope you know that. So would you pray with me now? Gracious God, I give you thanks for these young people, for their heart, for their faith, for the love they share. And I ask that you help us to know them. I know you know them all. You look into their hearts and you know them deeply and intimately, and we're so thankful for that. And I ask you now to bless them and keep them in your loving arms until we meet again in Christ's name. So we're in week 2 of our series with Mr. Rogers, hence the wardrobe change. Having fun. Oh, I forgot to hit this. I'm going to hit this real quick so that people that aren't here might be able to watch. This is our Facebook Live thing. So sorry about that. I meant to hit it earlier. But this is our second week of Mr. Rogers, and we're going to look at some of his main themes, some of his most important lessons that he taught over the years. And one of them is you are special. That you are special. And he said this, so many times over the course of his episodes. He would tell kids that you are special. And interestingly enough, this is one of the more controversial aspects of Mr. Rogers. We think of Mr. Rogers as, I thought of him as fairly universally loved. And especially if people around my age, but he's actually gotten some criticism over the years. And not just because he was kind of corny or because it was, that kind of understanding Mr. Rogers as being, too vanilla or something like that. But he's gotten criticism recently, especially because of, I guess the argument goes like this. If everybody is special, then nobody is special. Right? I mean, that's something that was a part of the movie Incredibles that it dealt with. This idea that saying everybody is special is just another way of saying nobody's special. Or this other piece, that if you're special just the way you are, then you don't have to do anything to achieve. Then you've got a sense of entitlement. And, well, if I'm special, then I should be given things. If I'm special, then, I'm owed things. And when we talk about generations, and this is a common criticism of what we know as the millennial generation, that they're just entitled. We've just raised a generation of entitlement, of people thinking that they deserve, free college or deserve, good grades. And you read articles about colleges struggling with students who don't take criticism very well, and you hear, lots of criticism. And we're going to watch a little bit of this. Part of this movie that we've been looking at is called Won't You Be My Neighbor? And part of this documentary gives us a couple minutes of this criticism of, so if Mr. Rogers is telling everybody you're special, what does that actually mean? And what has that done to people? And hopefully, can we get it?
Are you ready?
All right, yeah.
There's so much to think about, isn't there?
This is a little early. This is just before the piece, so I just wanted to make sure.
Let me ask you something about what we've been discussing for the last 3 hours. Mr. Rogers and the narcissistic society that he gave birth to because he told every kid that they were important. Do you believe his philosophy destroyed a generation?
Evil man.
The criticism goes like this. You told everyone they were special. They don't have to do anything to earn that special. That's what's wrong with our country. That's what's wrong with children today.
He didn't say, if you want to be special, you're going to have to work hard. Now all these kids are growing up and they're realizing, hey, wait a minute. Mr. Rogers lied to me. I'm not special.
I'm sure by then Fred had heard the criticisms, but he's not talking about entitlement. And if you don't believe that everyone has inherent value, you might as well go against the fundamental notion of Christianity that you are the beloved son or daughter of God.
Mr. Rogers, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Glad to meet you. Thank you.
I watched your show as a youngster. I wasn't allowed to go to preschool because I had a disability. And my mom made me watch your show with me. So
Bless your heart and your
it's full education.
And thank you for inspiring me today.
At the very end of Fred's very last commencement speech, he said what he meant when he said, "You're special."
And what that ultimately means, of course, is that you don't ever have to do anything sensational for people to love you.
It is really a matter of believing that you're endowed by your Creator with good.
There are many different ways of saying I love you. In fact, I like to.
To criticize Mr. Rogers for telling people that they're special is to criticize a big piece of our biblical story. A big part of our understanding of who we are as people, as created in the image of God. It goes back to even the first chapter in Genesis, that human beings were created in the image of God. But this psalm in particular is a potent one. This is Psalm 139. This poem that might have shocked you near the end of it as you were hearing Autumn read it, and she read it beautifully. But there's that piece near the end that might have, if you were paying attention, kind of shocked you a little bit. But in the midst of it, the first part of this psalm is this intimate portrayal of God who knows you, God who knows me, set apart. Another translation says, I was fearfully and wonderfully made. This translation says, marvelously set apart. And here the psalmist reflects on this idea that we are unique, we are created, we are special. I am special because I've been created by God in all of me. And then it goes on to say, this is a struggle. You know, part of the psalm, there's a little bit of fear. To be known that well, to be known that much by God, it's a little hard to wrap your head around. Because there are parts of me that I don't really want God to know. It talks about the dark places. You know, sometimes I wish I could escape from God. I mean, it even uses the word escape. Where could I escape your presence? Because there are times in my life that I don't want God. There are things that I do that I don't want God to see. There are times in my life that I wish God wasn't there. And there's an intimacy there that is hard. And yet God is still there. This is the intimacy of God that knows us so fully and so well. And yet, despite that, despite the dark places, God's knowing doesn't end and God's love doesn't end. And see, the psalm even takes us to a dark place. It walks us right into this kind of anger, this kind of frustration that we feel with some people sometimes. But you notice in the part that's hard, if only God, you would kill all the wicked. In that paragraph, this is the psalmist, this is the writer, the poet saying, if only this would happen, God, because this is sharing even the anger, even the dark places in our lives, even this emotion that I don't really like about me. But all the darkness, all the anger comes from the psalmist, from the writer. This poem describes an intimacy with God, a knowledge of God that is profound and deep and scary. But it's reaffirming this idea that you are special. This intimacy, this being created by God is so much a part of who you are, you can't undo it. And to misunderstand Mr. Rogers of saying, you are special and then therefore you're entitled to prizes, you're entitled to wealth, you're entitled to all these kinds of things, is to misunderstand not only Mr. Rogers, but I think it's to misunderstand our gospel story. It's to misunderstand this truth and what knowledge of God means. Because what Mr. Rogers wanted more than anything was to know people, to know and to let people know that they are worth knowing. Because there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of people in this world that don't think they're worth knowing. They don't think they're worth being known. They don't think they're worth being loved. But he wanted to make sure that everyone knew that there was something unique and there was something beautiful in them. And he never called it a divine spark on the show, but that's exactly what he thought it was. Going back to this basic truth, that we are created in the image of God and called good. Now, I can't help but feel like part of this debate over what Mr. Rogers, whether he ruined a generation or not, goes back to a very basic understanding of the gospel, the very basic understanding of what it is to have faith in God. Because there's some that claim, and I'm going to describe two kinds of strands of Christianity, and it's not that either one is wrong, but they're both, there's a tension here. Because if you believe that humanity is basically broken, basically sinful, then we need a Savior who will save us from that sin. We need a Savior who will sacrifice, will appease God, who is a just and holy God, And so we who are sinful need some sort of sacrifice, need some sort of atonement for that sin. And so the perfect sacrifice was Jesus, who was perfect. And so through his death we are atoned for our sin. And this is an understanding of Christianity. And if you read the Gospel of John and most of Paul's letters, it's a very powerful understanding. And so we need to, that plays out in a lot of different ways. But if you understand Christianity and that we are created in the image of God, we are good, and we need to be reminded of that Jesus was sent to show us what goodness looks like. And to remind us that we are loved and we can love one another, that the death of Jesus was the ultimate example of self-sacrifice and love. And that the resurrection was a reminder that, yes, that's actually the way of living. That is the way of God. That is the way. That kind of self-sacrifice, that kind of love, that kind of welcome is what God wants us, intends for our lives. So calling us special, calling you beloved, is a reminder that you are created in God's image and you can live into that. That Jesus' love is for you as well, even though you fail sometimes, even though we mess up sometimes, but you're entitled to love, you're entitled to being loved. And if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and the book of Acts, that's very strong in those books. And I think a lot of the divisions in our world and a lot of the divisions in our church comes from which way you kind of lean. Because both are true. Both are aspects of Christianity that are strong and biblical and faithful. But which way you lean, I think, can have a lot of repercussions on how you are inclusive with different people, about how you think about interfaith relationships, about how you understand evangelism, about what you understand the mission of the church to be. But Mr. Rogers, starting with you are special. And I want to know you for who you are. It sits in the tradition of this song. That you are created, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, you are marvelously set apart. And yes, there are dark times, there are anxious thoughts, there are dark places in our minds and in our world and in our lives, but through it all, God is there, God is present. Through the valley of the shadow of death, God is there pursuing us. Sitting on the front porch, waiting for the sun to return. Running out to greet him when he does. God, Jesus, who is there with the children, willing to embrace a child, do this shameful thing that men weren't supposed to do, that we talked about last week. To lower himself, to embrace and bless a child. So yes, this understanding that you are special, I think, does create a sense of entitlement. Absolutely. You are special, and you are entitled to being loved. You are entitled to following the way of Jesus. You are entitled to Jesus' grace, to the way Jesus lived, the way Jesus welcomed the stranger. You're entitled to welcome people like that. You're entitled to reach out across borders and barriers. You're entitled to reach out to children and to women and to lepers and to tax collectors. You're entitled to do all of those things. You're entitled to lay yourself down and take up your cross and serve the least of these. You're absolutely entitled to do that. Because you are fearfully and wonderfully made to love like God loved, to love like Jesus loved. So if that creates a generation of entitlement, bring it on. I love that kind of entitlement in our world. That kind of entitlement to say, yes, I'm going to follow Christ. Because I've been loved and he showed me a way of not worrying anymore, putting aside that anxiety, putting aside that fear, being loved in spite of my failures, to grow into something that more than I ever thought I could be. Because for me, that's where faith began with me. It didn't begin out of a fear of punishment. I had that. That was part of my life too. But following Christ, you shouldn't follow Christ because you're afraid of being punished if you don't. Follow Christ because you've been loved into knowing what that's like. Because you are loved, because you are special, because you are fearfully and wonderfully made, because you are marvelously set apart. Be free of those anxieties. Be free of that fear of failure. That's where faith started for me. When I realized I was loved, no matter what. And no matter where you started with your faith, maybe you did start in a fearful kind of faith. And maybe you're still kind of there. You know, fear is a powerful thing, and it's not an easy thing to just set aside. But I hope you see that there's another way of knowing God. There's another way of knowing Christ. Not to be afraid of failure, not to be fearful of punishment, and no, I need to avoid that at any cost. But to know that you are special. You are marvelously set apart. And you're entitled to love and to be loved. To follow Christ for love's sake. Not for fear's sake. And so I'll close again. As Mr. Rogers always did. It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside. And when you wake up ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling. A very good feeling. The feeling you know that I'll be back when the week is new. And I'll have more ideas for you. And you'll have things you'll want to talk about. I will too. This time of offering, I invite you to the flap on the bulletin that took place that you can tear off, and I'd love for you to fill that out and reflect, especially there, as we've asked, about if there's anyone willing to help out with our Wednesday night in particular. But there's many ways to give of yourself, to give of your time and your energy, to be a part of this body of Christ, this community of faith that is trying to